In the shadows of Mexico's war on drugs, a fugitive vanishes, a judge is blamed, and Washington issues a threat. But fentanyl is just the beginning. From cartel riots to toxic gold, Mexico isn't just fighting crime, it's fighting for control of its soul. Facing mounting domestic pressure to stem the flow of fentanyl, the Trump administration issued an ultimatum to Mexico: act decisively against drug cartels or face economic consequences. On the very day, Zhi Dong Zhang, a Chinese national accused of trafficking fentanyl precursors and laundering over $150 million, vanished from house arrest in Mexico City. Mexican negotiators in Washington were warned. The daring escape highlighted the fragility of Mexico's campaign against organized crime, especially as pressure mounts from the Trump administration, which has designated Mexican cartels as terrorist groups and tied their elimination to the removal of tariffs on Mexican exports.
President Trump has been crystal clear that Mexico must do more to combat these gangs and cartels, and the U.S. stands ready to assist and expand the already close cooperation between our two countries.
Trump and his top officials have signaled that if Mexico fails to act decisively, the U.S. may resort to unilateral military intervention. Not only that, the Trump administration threatened to impose a 30% tariff on all Mexican goods, initially scheduled to take effect on August 1st, unless swift and measurable action was taken to curb cartel activity. However, the White House later delayed the measure by 90 days, citing ongoing dialogue and operational cooperation with Mexican authorities. The breakthrough came after President Claudia Sheinbaum agreed to enter talks over a broader cross-border security framework. Since then, Mexico has ramped up enforcement efforts, deploying over 10,000 troops to the US border, extraditing 29 cartel suspects, and dismantling more than 1,000 synthetic drug labs. Still, the damage was done. Zhang's escape in July 2025 was not just an embarrassment. It triggered fury in both Washington and Mexico City. The circumstances were staggering. In October 2024, Mexican military forces had captured Zhang just outside the capital based on an intelligence tip. But instead of placing him in high-security detention, a Mexican judge opted for house arrest, an inexplicable decision given the severity of the charges and the US extradition request. By July, Zhang had simply disappeared, slipping through a hole in the wall of the guarded property, under the watch of Mexico's National Guard. The backlash was swift. President Claudia Sheinbaum condemned the judiciary's role in the blunder, raising long-standing concerns about corruption in the legal system.
I'm in the process of informing them. The search is ongoing. What's most relevant here is the judge. I believe that's the key point again, because we're talking about someone who was detained, and yet the judge, without offering any justification, granted house arrest. This decision came despite the prosecution presenting all the necessary arguments. There was absolutely no justification given, and that ruling should never have been made. We've repeatedly raised concerns about corruption within the judiciary. How is it possible that, even as the prosecution and the Judicial Council pushed for this individual to remain in custody due to the gravity of the case, the judge still granted this release? The Security Cabinet will provide more detailed information on the matter.
But the crisis didn't end with Zhang. In July, in the industrial city of Irapuato, Guanajuato, Mexico's most violent state, construction workers discovered dismembered human remains buried near a building site. Forensic experts later confirmed they belonged to at least 34 individuals. Only 15 have been identified so far due to the condition of the bodies. Families of the disappeared rushed to the scene, including members of the collective Hasta Encontrat, or Until I Find You. Despite being a thriving hub for manufacturing and tourism, Guanajuato accounted for over 3,100 killings in 2024 alone, fueled by a bloody turf war between the Santa Rosa de Lima gang and the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG. With Zhang on the run, cartel violence on the rise, and pressure from Washington mounting, the Sheinbaum government is battling on multiple fronts, and its credibility is now under global scrutiny. Mexico's escalating cartel violence has triggered a fresh wave of militarization, most visibly in Sinaloa, the traditional stronghold of the country's drug trade. In August 2025, over 2,000 additional troops were deployed to Culiacan, raising the total number of soldiers in the state to more than 11,000. The surge followed violent infighting between rival factions of the Sinaloa cartel, reportedly triggered by the capture of longtime kingpin Ismael El Mayo Zambada. Despite the troop presence, the bloodshed continues. In recent weeks, Mexican security forces have dismantled 9 meth labs, seized over 10,000 kilograms of synthetic drugs, confiscated 116 firearms and 24,000 rounds of ammunition, and arrested 65 suspected cartel members. Yet, Sinaloa remains one of Mexico's deadliest states. More than 1,500 people have been killed in 2025 alone, with 2,000 more missing or presumed kidnapped. Heavily armed compounds, clandestine drug labs, and narco tunnels continue to flourish. Local police are often outgunned, outnumbered, and compromised, prompting the federal government to rotate military command posts regularly to prevent corruption entrenchment. During a recent visit to Sinaloa, President Claudia Sheinbaum faced a political storm of her own. Ovidio Guzman, son of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, pleaded guilty in a U.S. court as his lawyer accused Sheinbaum of being a cartel mouthpiece. She denied the allegation and threatened legal action. Sinaloa's Governor Ruben Rocha, also facing accusations of cartel links, stood alongside her and likewise rejected the claims. While fentanyl and cocaine dominate headlines, Mexican cartels are expanding into lesser-known but equally lethal trades. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG, is now making billions trafficking mercury, used heavily in illegal gold mining across South America. A new report by the US-based Environmental Investigation Agency, EIA, reveals that CJNG has smuggled around 200 tons of mercury out of Mexico since 2019, generating an estimated $8 billion. The chemical is stockpiled in fortified sites in Querétaro, some protected by surveillance towers, gates, and armed guards. Disguised as construction material and concealed in gravel bags, the mercury is shipped via major Mexican ports like Manzanillo and Veracruz. In June 2025, 4 tons were seized by Peruvian customs at Callao port, hidden in a 20-ton gravel shipment worth nearly $500,000. The EIA tracked at least 50 such shipments, mainly to Bolivia, Colombia, and Peru. Once there, mercury is used to extract gold from riverbeds, a process behind 40% of global man-made mercury emissions. The CJNG launders the proceeds by melting gold into crude jewelry and smuggling it abroad. Though Mexico signed the 2013 Minamata Convention, which curbs mercury trade, enforcement remains weak, and cartels are exploiting every loophole.
Mercury smuggling has deadly lasting effects for generations in Mexico and across Latin America.
The EIA urges governments to recognize mercury trafficking as a convergence crime, fueled by environmental degradation, human rights violations, arms smuggling, and narco-financing.